Sri Vasudevanand Saraswati, Chapter 11. Life at Garudeshwar. The last few years of our saint's life in Garudeshwar saw the sun of his spiritual glory and mystic splendor at its zenith. As already observed in the foregoing videos, his occult powers, which were opening out even while he was a householder in the eyes of the community at Managaon, had now reached the ripe spiritual stage, and he was now revered, prayed, and worshipped as the very avatar of Lord Dattatreya in the human form. The bhaktas who prayed to him in their minds, even though physically away from him, were granted the grace of his sight and succor after the manner of his Ishtadev Dattatreya, who is also praised for the same loving kindness by the saints and sages of old, who have described him as the Lord with the whole universe as his garment, and is approachable to those who only remember him with all their being. Sri Vasudevanand Saraswati himself has prayed to the Lord in one of his hymns by remembering this divine trait. I bow to him who is our emancipator from this dangerous world. May he who responds to our meditation save me. The devotees of our saint also were sure that Gurudev was like the Lord Dattatreya who arrived in this Kali age as our savior. Infinitely varied types of the bhaktas thronged to him daily or wrote to him letters for his grace and guidance in their difficulties and problems of life. They were from all strata of community, the rich and the poor, the young and the old, the educated and the illiterate, even the Parsis and Muslims, along with the Hindus. He blessed them all and granted them relief from their ailments, physical or psychological, by creating in them a firm faith in the religious way of life and directing them all with the humility characteristic of a true saint to the sure source of peace and joy in life, namely to God Himself. Even those who are very proud of their learning, cynic in their attitude, and boastful of their knowledge of modern science, fell prostrate at his feet and silently prayed for his blessings. Sri Rangavadut is inspired to speak of these miracles in a strain of deep devotion to our saint in his Namasudha. Says Sri Rangavadut that the numberless souls who were non believers were converted to faith through strange, mysterious ways, and many were inspired to elect the course of bhakti by establishing their rapport with the holy saints through devotion. Out of a long list of instances recorded by Rangavadut in his Namasudha, a few outstanding ones may be given here in respect to our foregoing observations. A case of one Dr. Tatake deserves a special note. Dr. Tatake was himself a man of medical repute who had given the lease of life to many a dying patient by his knowledge and skill in the medical science. But strangely enough, he himself suffered from grave gangrene in his leg. In spite of all the best treatment known to him and to his other colleagues, he could not see any cure for it. They left no stone unturned for the same, but it was too of no purpose. He was advised to consider the last inevitable remedy of the amputation of the diseased part of the body. Dr. Tatake perhaps would have given his consent and the leg would have been amputated. But luck and the grace of our saint intervened. To his own surprise, Dr. Tatake, the man of science, agreed to refer the case to Saint Vasudevanand and handed himself over to him with sincere prayer one day. Gurudev was waiting for this moment. He received Dr. Tatake with sympathy and love, confided to him a mantra, and exhorted him to meditate on its sacred efficacy in strict conformity with the spiritual prescription given to him. The mantra proved effective where all the medical formulas and surgical instruments had failed, and the cure, which was a despair of all the experts, became a hope and a possibility. Dr. Tatake got back his leg and was hale and hearty. Thus, where the human intelligence was baffled and confounded, the faith worked. The faith that was aided by the grace of Sri Vasudevanand. Our saint had a divine insight and discernment in directing and guiding his devotees in their problems according to their mental and spiritual caliber and level, like a real teacher who fathoms the path of his pupils from beginning to teach. To Dr. Tatake, who was an educated man of science and hence perhaps hard of faith, he gave a sacred mantra as a cure for his disease. There was a case of a less educated and simple soul, Kalyanji by name, a Brahmin living in Broch. His son was seriously sick and the sickness defied all earthly prescriptions for his cure. Kalyanji was advised to seek the blessings of our saint and he did so. When he came and prayed to Vasudevanand, the saint gave him a tangible divine yantra. Mark the difference in treatment here from the one given to Dr. Tatake. The divine yantra was a holy copper plate containing sacred diagrams and advised him to worship it with faith for the prescribed period, strictly following the instructions given to him. Kalyanji, who was a simple-hearted man of faith and piety, followed it up. He realized that his son was getting better and back to normalcy. He was glad to find his son free from the malady which had worried them all for a long time. These two instances help us to grasp the potency of the mysterious powers possessed by the saint and yoked by him to the service of suffering humanity with an unselfish sense of mercy and love for them. It should be here remembered once again that he who could bring to books the evil spirits and who could cure his bhaktas of deadly diseases never used these powers even to keep away his own occasional fever or a physical pain. Where his own self was concerned, he expressed his implicit faith in Adi Shankara's advice. Bear the result of the past deeds. And to the frequent importunity of his bhaktas, he would only answer quietly that for him the holy waters of the Narmada or the Ganga would serve the purpose of medicine, and God for him was the doctor of all doctors. This indifference to the ills of life to which we are all a prey, this attitude of forbearance and tolerance is a mark of sthitaprajna, of one who is firmly established in the Supreme. We are reminded here of the great grandsire of the days of Mahabharata, of Bhishma Pitamaha, who, while reposed on the bed of arrows prior to his farewell to the warring world around him, prayerfully insisted in the presence of Lord Krishna. He says, "Let all the diseases that are my dues take possession of me. I wish to depart for the eternal state with a complete clearance of my debts." We should debit the amount of our karmas and disburden ourselves through endurance and suffering, and thus make ourselves comfortable on the arduous pilgrimage of the soul from life to eternity. The instances of Dr. Tatake and Kalyanji reveal to us our saints' mystic mastery over the baffling problems of medical science. We shall take a note of one more event of quite a different category, of course, to illustrate his infinite compassion for the simple-hearted souls. Visitors at Garudeshwar are familiar with the name of Holkars of Indore, to whose charities the river ghats, the holy asylums, or dharmashalas at various places of pilgrimages in India, and especially at Garudeshwar and Managaon, the seats of spiritual presence of Gurudev, stand witness today. The Holkars of Indore, the princely family in Malwa, are reputed for their religious attitude and respect for the saints and their charitable trusts in the cause of religion in this land. The story of the marriage of Maharani Indirabai Holkar to Prince Tukoji Rao Holkar is an event that passeth understanding. Maharani Indirabai was born in a not a very wealthy family, though she came of a noble stock of the Maratha race in Maharashtra. Indira came of age and was engaged to Tukoji Rao Holkar, the Prince of Indore. After the engagement, the prince left for Europe. He was away for about a year and there was no news about him to the parents of Indira. It seemed the prince was not in a mood to follow up the engagement to its proper end in marriage. They were naturally anxious about her fate. Someone who was their friend and a great devotee of our saint managed to send Indira's horoscope for scrutiny by him and for his opinion about the possibilities of her marriage to the Prince of Indore. Sri Vasudevanand studied the horoscope and returned it with the remark that there was no indications of the royal prospects in her life. Now the friend of Indira's parents and the Bhakt, whose name was Narayan Pujari, sent the chart back to the saint with a prayer that they all believed in the power of Gurudev's blessings and grace, and hence the very stars in the horoscope which had the luck of being touched by his holy hands, would change their course in her favor and obey him if only the saint would wish them to do so. Our saint was greatly moved by the simple faith of those people and advised Indira to practice a vow to propitiate Shiva and Gauri until the next Margashirsha, which would prove to be the month of her marriage to the Prince Holkar. His words came true to a word. Indira was married to Prince Tukoji Rao on Monday, significantly Shiva's day, which was the 10th day of the first fortnight of Margashirsha in Shaka 1835, as prophesied by the saint. She became the well-known Maharani Indira Devi Holkar, who commemorated the grace of the saint in her life through generous donations to the cause for which he lived. Pages can be devoted to the narration of such phenomenal events, but the temptation to do so needs a check in view of the plan of this biography and also of the fact that the cases sampled out are enough to marshal evidence in support of the foregoing observations in the matter. Dr. Radhakrishnan, the great Indian thinker, one of the greatest philosophers of the world, has observed, "What makes the ascetic great is his holiness and humanity. It is not the capacity to do conjurer's trick or dream mysterious dreams, but it is to remain pure from passion and desire." The cases cited here are based on the well-known biographies of our saint, written by authors of great spiritual standing and repute among the bhaktas of Sri Vasudevanand. Grateful mention deserves to be made to the third part, Upasana Kand of Sri Guru Lilamrut in Gujarati by Sri Rangavadoot, in the poetic form to which we have already referred. Similarly, the three biographies in prose written in Marathi by Sri Gulwani Maharaj, Sri Kinjavadekar Shastri, both from Pune, and Sri Koparkar from Baroda, have been the most faithful records of the events in the life of our saint. These books have authenticated the events as facts known and witnessed by so many of this saint's devotees, excluding the innumerable other proofs or experiences of others which have escaled the register of the biographers, but truly possessed by the individuals who were personally concerned with the miracles in the profound privacies of their inner being. Sri Rangavadoot aptly sums up the point in the verse of his Namasudha. Hail to thee, Sri Vasudev, who, having exhibited his phenomenal powers to the bhaktas, wound up the life on earth in a worldly sense only. For truly the Gurudev is ever present to his bhaktas who remember him with all their soul, their heart and mind. Jai Thembe Swami.